6 on the agenda, which is Jupiter and Leader House in Station Road. Would the following people please come to the table? Mr. Mike Derbyshire, Head of Planning at Bidwells, and the ubiquitous Richard Robertson, Ward Councillor. The case officer in this case is Charlotte Burton. Charlotte, over to you. Sorry, will members of the public settle down, please? Thank you very much. Charlotte Burton.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site comprises the existing Jupiter House number 10 and Leader House number 20 Station Road. On the western end of Station Road, adjacent to Tech House. The site relates to what's referred to as blocks J3 and J4 of the CB1 master plan. The site is within the station area development framework boundary within the central station area. So this is a full planning application for demolition of the existing buildings, construction of a single new office building comprising 14,274 square metres of B1A office and B1B research and development space with associated car parking, cycle parking, access, landscaping and servicing. As a full application, this does not need to be compliant with the outline master plan, however this is a mere material consideration. The current application follows on from previous proposals, the separate replacement buildings at numbers 20 Station Road, which have a resolution to grant consent from the planning committee subject to completion of section 163. And these decisions also material considerations as well. Compared to the proposal represents an increase in floor space by virtue of the link between the two buildings and the additional storage on the element replacing number 10, which is shown within the table in paragraph 2.2 of my report. So these are the floor plans, starting at the base of the building. The basement will provide 98 car parking spaces for servicing. Vehicle access to the basement will be via a ramp adjacent to the existing ramp number 22 to form a two-way ramp. The Highways Authority has reviewed the access arrangements which have been supported under previous consents and is satisfied from a highway safety perspective. The ground floor includes a central glazed atrium from the front to the back of the building. And 482 cycle parking spaces will be provided in accordance with standards at the rear of the building as well. And this will be accessed via the space to the rest of the building. The first floor would maintain elements of the glazed atrium from the front, middle and back. And the floor plan shows as you go up that area atrium is reduced to getting to the 5th story, floor plan going right up to the edge of the The 5th floor would be recessed by contributing to the system landscaping at the roof level as well. And the roof shows areas of plant and photovoltaic panels. So these are the proposed elevations showing two elements of the building. And with the recessed glaze length in the middle, and you can see the setback story and elements of the roof part on the top. This is the rear elevation. And these are the side elevations, west and east. And this is a graphic from the applicant design and access statement showing what this might look like. The materials would be brick with a stone base, and the design has incorporated these curved elements and chamfered windows as well. So I'll come back to talk about the landscaping later on. So as I said, the previous consents are material considerations, so to allow you to make a comparison, I've just provided some information for you. Compared to the approved scheme then, the atrium would be 9 metres wide, which is similar to the gaps between previous buildings, but obviously it would be a glazed link rather than open space. This has allowed the western part of the building to move substantially eastwards. So the footprint of the approved scheme in red here, and the current scheme would be an additional created gap about 10 metres between the edge of the building and the boundary with the kept house. And this has also had the effect of pushing away from the southwestern boundary and from the southern boundary as well here. The proposal does maintain the setback from Station Road, which is consistent along Station Road, about 9 metres. In terms of the building heights, this shows the proposed street scene under the current application, and then again for comparison, this is an outline showing the approved two buildings for 1020. The proposed building would be 23.4 metres high, which would be 1.3 metres lower than the approved scheme for number 20. But you can see it would be 1 storey higher than the scheme that's been approved for number 10. However, in design terms, I share the view of the urban design conservation team that the proposal would be acceptable. The building would be lower than number 22 and would maintain the height differential along Station Road, which has been an important part of the concept of the City Master Plan. And those are just some photographs to So looking at the landscaping proposal, as I said, the scheme maintains the continuation of the linear park along the southern side of Station Road. And would also introduce a pocket park, as I said, approximately 10 metres wide to the west of the building, which would be additional space that would complement that to the linear park. The proposal also includes some internal planting within the atrium and some planting at the rear of the site here to give the idea of that gap, maintaining the gap between the buildings in visual terms. And there will be some rooftop planting as well. And these are just some graphics from the applicant's design access statement showing firstly the linear park and the pocket park to the west and how that might look. And this is to give you an idea of the atrium, an internal view showing how the elements, particularly the first floor, which walk over might work. And as I said, this is showing how the floor plan tapers, how the atrium tapers as it goes upwards, so there would be opportunities in internal planting again to try and create that sense of greenery and the openness between those two elements of the building. Turning now to residential amenity, the site is within a sensitive location within the CB1 development with the hotel here, number 75, 77, 79 Hills Road, which are in residential use, approximately here, and then the flats within one close directly to the south. And I have received an objection from the occupants of number 77 with regard to the impact on their residential amenity. So this is just to show you a bit more about the hotel. This is a view within the current site, looking westwards towards the western element, towards the extension of the hotel. And you can see there that there are very few windows that actually face directly onto the site. The outlook from these rooms is primarily south and north, but there are windows on the rear elevation, as you can see here, of the main terrace part of the hotel. These are views taken from within the car park of the existing hotel towards the current house at number 10. This is a view taken from the garden of number 77 Hills Road, which was modified from a photograph submitted by the applicants. Obviously, when considering the impact on residential amenity, this is in the context of the existing situation with the current building, obviously has a significant impact, as well as the consented schemes. So by way of comparison to those, the current application, as I said, has moved the building further, the edge of the building further eastwards, creating a larger gap to the hotel in particular, and has also increased slightly the gap to the southern boundary as well. But the western element of the building is 1 storey higher. The applicant has provided a daylight and sunlight assessment, which has been really carefully considered by the urban design team, and they are satisfied that will be accepted in terms of daylight and sunlight, both for the hotel and for the residential uses. It's worth pointing out, obviously, that the hotel is not a permanent residential accommodation, although there is an element of it in the southern part of the terrace, and therefore, where the building is closest to adjoining properties, this use is less sensitive than the residential uses further to the south. And in terms of these, the impact on these dwellings, there is a separation gap of approximately 26 metres here and approximately 13 metres here. So while I consider this to be quite a finely balanced issue, I'm of the view that there would not be significant harm in terms of overbearing an enclosure to the occupants of the residential properties or to the hotel, and therefore my recommendation has been for approval on this matter. With regard to Warren Close, again, this has been assessed through the applicant's design daylight and sunlight assessment, and I have provided quite a detailed assessment of that within my report. But again, this element is similar building line and similar height to the approved schemes, so the impact would be very similar and is acceptable. Now, just to draw your attention to the amendment sheet, in particular regarding condition 15, which referred to overlooking issues. The original condition had recommended steel glaze treatment of the western, southwestern and southern elevations. I have reworded that condition to ensure that it's consistent with the previous decisions that were made to require some steel glaze treatment of the southwestern elevation facing towards the hotel, and the additional story on the southern elevation for the western element. And I'm satisfied that, subject to that condition, there wouldn't be any significant additional overlooking towards neighbouring properties compared to the existing situation or the previous schemes as well. There would be some views from the glazed link, however I'm satisfied with the distance and the fact that those would be obscured, at an oblique angle, so we wouldn't have a significant impact there. So, also on the amendment sheets, I have referred to a representation that was received from the occupants of 30 Lingwood Road. This queried the contributions that have been sought from the Highways Authority. The query is about whether the contributions that were sought under the outline consent towards the Southern Transport Corridor and the Diamond Busway, these were the third payments, whether those would be sought in the current application. The Highways Authority on the current application has requested contributions towards the information centre within the CB1 development and also towards traffic calming in Person Road as well. I think the difference, we've responded to set out our response to that query on the amendment sheet, and I've received a further correspondence just requesting some additional detail on that point, which the Highways Authority, as the authority who requested the contributions, is responding to. I'm satisfied that the contributions that have been requested by the Highways Authority meet the SIL regulations in terms of being appropriate mitigation for proposed development. So, also just to draw your attention to the minor amendments to some of the other conditions on conditions 9 and 10 on the amendment sheet, subject to this. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions and completion of the section.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Resolutions have already been granted for the redevelopment of both 10 and 20 Station Road. So this isn't about reinventing the wheel, it's about looking at the rationale and the merits for the changes. We've changed the two consented buildings because in simple terms, this is what came to occupiers required. One, the square, the office building fronting Station Square, was fully let before practical completion, and houses Amazon, Thales, Deloitte's, their research arms, amongst others. The attraction was the much larger floor plates, which encourages collaborative and social working, and this is how modern offices are working. It's a different environment. This experience has been reinforced with our letting of 5060, which is similar in terms of its layout and has generated very significant interest from world-class tenants of similar calibre. So we're making the changes to respond to what the market occupier requires, and Charlotte's first slide shows how those buildings work together in terms of the floor plates. There have been some objections, and I've read Councillor Robertson's objections. He refers to the need to review traffic movements across Station Square and Great North Road, and I heard the discussion earlier. The application we're discussing is at the edge of CV1, close to Hills Road, the furthest part from Station Square. The vast majority of the traffic movements associated with this application simply will not travel through the square or via Great North Road. There's no need to. The TA submitted with the application and agreed by your highway authority assigns no movements along Great North Road and Station Square. The two consents for 10 and 20 had 77 car parking spaces. We're proposing a small increase of 21 to 98. The grant of this planning permission, or otherwise, UPC in your grant will have no material bearing on the traffic movements through the Station Square. But we are aware of criticisms of the flow of traffic along Great North Road and through Station Square. That was the preferred configuration from all of us at the time. Let's remember that. That wasn't one person's consensus view. And we are in detailed discussions with the city and other stakeholders, and I think Councillor Robertson, you're involved in those discussions, to see if there is a solution. This will require a consensual coordinated approach to approval. The county raises no objections to the technical work produced by my client's transport consultants, and you should rely on the professional technical advice that you have from the highway authority. The change to the design of the buildings and the relationship with the nearest neighbour is beneficial. You've seen that on the screen. Some remember that the hotel operator objected and spoke at this last planning committee. He's not here today. And the movement away from Hills Road in particular is only beneficial. The remainder of the buildings are lined along very similar lines, but is better, and the landscaping is improved. This building will generate 1,000 jobs, varied jobs, in the most sustainable location in Cambridge. The opportunity to travel by train, bus, guided bus, cycle or walk is not matched anywhere else. The site is genuinely brownfield, recycling 2 buildings at the end of their life. It will represent the best opportunity to finalise the development along Station Road. I hope you can support the officer's recommendation. The £450,000 in the Section 106 is for the information centre and for traffic calming, and my client is committed to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. You will have seen from my comments that I'm entirely concerned about the impact on the area surrounding the building. It's up to you to decide on the building itself, obviously. When CBR1 area was given outline approval, I understand the assessments of growth in people movements in the area were prepared and taken into account. However, since then, 2 things have happened. Firstly, the growth in passenger movements at the station has been much higher than expected. They were working on 7 to 9 million people a year at that time. They're now on 12 million at the moment, and they're expected to grow further than that. The other major change is that several buildings in the CB1 area have been granted permission for bigger premises than were allowed for at the outline approval stage. The application for these much larger offices at 10 and 20 Station Road is a further example, and like others will mean higher levels of staff travelling to and from work at that address each day. It's not just traffic movement, it's people movement, it's cyclists, it's pedestrians. The combination of all of them needs to be reassessed. I think before any further building should be permitted, which exceed the size allowed for in the outline permission for the whole area, there needs to be a new assessment, and I suggested a cumulative impact assessment of the impact of all these additional buildings and higher buildings, and in this case combining 2 buildings into one, making a bigger footprint, a higher building, and expecting there to be 1,000 people working there, whereas I think at the moment it's far less than that in the 2 buildings combined. I think the impact on the area needs to be assessed much more clearly. In the assessments, the transport assessment provided by the applicant, they referred to temporary to controlled crossings on Station Road, which don't exist. There were some temporary ones while some building works were being done, but there are no pedestrian crossings on Station Road from its junction with Hills Road. The pedestrian movement observations ignores the issue of many pedestrians who walk to and fro along Tennyson Road every day, especially during peak hours. No mention is made of the fact that Great Northern Road now takes all the traffic to and from Station Square without there being a pedestrian crossing on that road. This, although it's on the edge of the CB1 area, is an integral part of it. It's symptomatic of the creeping growth problem we've got. Every time a new application comes in to make an outline into a full application, it's for a bigger building. It's higher, it's wider. This is going to break the straw that will break the camel's back, in my view. I think you should not accept this until a proper cumulative impact assessment is made of the whole area. But that's my case to you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now the application is open to discussion by members. Who's going? Lucy.
I am delighted to see this coming forward. I think it looks like an improvement on the previous situation. I think the move away from the hotel and away from Hills Road is sensible. I actually think it's sensible to have one building instead of two. I will be happy on the whole to support this. I did just want to respond to Councillor Robertson's comments, which I think are extremely interesting. I don't think that they give us sufficient grounds to turn down this building, but I do think that there is a lot in what he says about the very high density in that area, the increase of the use of the station. I think a review of this area and a comprehensive look at the access would be very helpful. So I think that that's something, he's a cabinet member on the council here, I suggest he picks it up and takes it forward. I think it would be a very good idea, but I don't think it's a reason for setting this proposal down.
Councillor Antony.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I very much endorse those comments, and I've listened with interest to Councillor Robertson's thoughts, and I think that he's right. We should proceed with more thought and consideration about the growing numbers. However, I like this building. I think the atrium will be a very attractive feature. I think the way the corners have been chamfered and add some elegance and style to the building. And we're here to judge this building more than the wider issues that Councillor Robertson has raised, even though they are important. So yes, I think this is, as an office block, it's a much improved offering compared to what is there now and some others. So it has my support. Thank you.
Councillor Blencowe.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, in terms of design, there's a subjective sort of assessment in terms of whether this, in design terms, is better and more appropriate than the two standalone office consents that are currently live. I think I agree with Councillor Antony. In design terms, probably this is a better solution. I have to point out, though, of course, this is resulting in another incremental increase in the overall floor space within the Station Road area as part of the overall development compared to what was envisaged in the long ago outline consent in 2008-2009. But in terms of this element, clearly the report talks about the comparative floor space and other parking numbers, which I'll come on to in a minute. But in terms of the incremental, it's another 1,000 plus square metres of extra floor space. Yeah, some of that will be, I guess, taken into account with the link building, but it is a steady incremental increase overall in the area, which is has been discussed and debated several times, and does have concerns. In terms of the car parking, again, the car parking number's gone up by 21 overall, if you compare the existing and the consents. I accept what Councillor Robson is saying in the general sense, because he knows this area very well and articulates the problems very well. Whether we could attach some of those major concerns on the back of a 21 car park space increase is a very debatable point, so I'm not going to pursue that. But there are a couple of points I need to ask. Clearly we have to specify these days what obligation payments are for, particularly in transport terms. We talk about a £300,000 payment to an information centre. I'd like a bit more information on that. I haven't seen the letter that refers to that, or if there's enough detail for me to make a consideration of that. There's also this point that was raised by a resident of 30 Linwood Road. It was envisaged at the outline stage that this old station area redevelopment will be done in phases, and this phase down the station road itself was a later phase, including as going on as a later phase, and there was an agreement for a triggered payment for guided bus for the guided busway and let me get this correct. Establish the guided busway. There was another allocation which I'll try and pick up in a moment. But those triggered payments, I know you've had discussions as a result of the correspondence with County Highways, but are we confident they have actually understood that point in terms of the difference between what was envisaged in terms of the trigger way back the outline stage, and whether they have taken that into a proper account? Because clearly those figures are pretty substantial, a lot more than is envisaged in these obligation payments. I'm not going to answer to that, because if I'm not confident the county have weighed that up properly and assessed the difference, then I think they're missing obviously a chance to accrue further public monies to the benefit of the local area. But I'll wait for an answer to the bit about the information centre before I make my final point, if I may, Chair.
A very brief comment. I think I'm on record as having had very considerable qualms about the whole concept of CB1. And I certainly have very considerable qualms about the logic of growth that the city embarked upon several years ago, and which is now in full force. People like me, unfortunately, have not seen their view prevail. We are into a growth scenario of a fairly relentless kind. The CB1 scheme has got its own design logic. This development seems to me to comply to that design logic, however unfortunately it might be. And in fact, I think probably there's no question that the design of the replacement building is to be preferred to that of the extant buildings. So I shall, with heavy heart as always, give my vote in approval of this application. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for the officer? Very good. Officer.
Through you, Chair, if I could come back in relation to the Section 106 questions. We had a question come through which has been referred to by Charlotte in general. And that related to this concept of deferred payments from an earlier phase of CB1 to this phase. We have, to some extent, been overtaken by events, because we can no longer make decisions on the same basis that we did back in 2008 when the application went through, and 2012 when the 2010 when the Section 106 was completed. Now we have to look and be ensured that we are complying with the SIL regulations. So whilst I can understand the concern that something was deferred which may or may not be coming to pass as this phase has now been reached, we cannot take that into account in terms of this application. We have to look at this as a full separate application in relation to the SIL regulations. Having said that, the developer's always been keen to ensure that there is a relationship between what was secured through the original Section 106 agreement and what's being delivered now. So I don't think it's fair to say that they have completely reneged on that arrangement. They've been very keen to pursue that. So in relation to that question, I did go through and look back at what was secured through 2010 and what was secured so far in relation to the changes to the master plan, particularly on the Station Road. And it is pretty much coming out even in terms of contributions to the likes of the Chisholm Trail, Station Road improvements, the wayfinding scheme for the station, and then obviously the additional requirements that are coming through in relation to this. So I'm confident that the county have looked at this in a holistic and proper way. In terms of the deferred payment, they are aware of that, but it's not something we can now secure because things have moved on and we're not in the same environment we were when we made those original decisions. Oh, sorry. I realised I didn't explain what the information centre was about. I haven't got a great deal of information on that. That is something that's been negotiated through the transport team at the county. My understanding is it relates to the whole vision for the area, which was to improve the transport interchange, improve the customer experience at the station. So it's primarily helping that area, that part of the master plan, work as best as it can do. So it should be read alongside things like the wayfinding and the Chisholm Trail.
Charlotte. Oh, so sorry. Councillor Smart.
So, yeah, I'd just like to come back on what's been said there. So the officers at SEAL, perhaps you should have said Community Infrastructure Levy, because not everyone will know what that is. And in terms of the name, it's called Community Infrastructure Levy. I'm not quite sure that an information centre provides anything for the local community. It seems more it's about people who are travelling to and fro through that area. So I feel a bit uncertain about that. Because that, the nature of the beast, the Community Infrastructure Levy, is for that community in that area, I thought.
Sarah, yeah, let's deal with that point.
Would you like Rebecca to come? Would you like Rebecca to come?
Rebecca, would you come back on that point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to say, it is called the Community Infrastructure Levy, but the actual SIL tests don't require any community tests. The tests really relate to whether the payment, the contribution, is related to and necessary and reasonable in scale in relation to the development that you are considering. That may well, of course, involve a community benefit, but that isn't a separate standalone test.
I think the word community is also subject to much abuse. We hear people talking about the global community. I mean, honestly, how far can you stretch this? Councillor,
These are important considerations here because these are huge amounts of public money potentially.
Yes.
So I'm going to concentrate on this. The point I raised about the previous deferred payment based on phasing at the 2008 outline, that the figures, and I've just managed to find the figures, the sums that were suggested to be deferred at that time, yes, I accept that time has moved on and things have changed, but the figures at that point were 920,000 towards the guided busway and 260,000 towards the overall Southern Corridor Transport Plan. That's over £1 million, right? That was the envisaged trigger and the envisaged amount of money to be paid in obligation. We've got to a stage now where the figures of substance are 300,000 towards the information centre and 150,000 towards the Tennyson Road traffic calming, which will be an enhancement to what's already been done. So there's a bit of a gap between the two, over £500,000 gap between those two figures. So that's why I'm saying that other have we got a categoric answer from the county that they are fully aware of what we are being asked to accept here, in terms of are they going to miss out on a potential payment that they could accrue from this application? Now, the point about the information centre, I remember when the outline permission talked about having the county archives based in the mill building, right, as a community benefit. Never materialised. We asked to set aside £300,000 towards this, what I think is a very vague information centre idea, with no, I've never come across it up till now. The point about having it right and having it worked up in a proper manner is that we cannot ask for anything else other than what we asked for on the back of this application. So if we ask for £300,000 towards the information centre and it never gets built, we've lost that. That's the point. That's public money we could have got for something and we've lost it. I am confident that we can spend another £500,000 within the Tennyson Road area on enhancing the traffic calming that's already in place, because we didn't finish all the features on Tennyson Road, and county councils might be aware of that. And there was also the intention to extend into Devonshire Road and St Barnabas Road to increase the overall mitigation measures. I think we could spend at least £500,000 again in that area. Now, if you're saying to me that we're going to accept this 300,000 to the information centre and only 150,000 to the Tennyson Road, let alone with it being £500,000 less than what we anticipated years ago, then I'm a bit uncomfortable with that, because I think it's too vague and too aspirational to be accepted without a fallback. Now, if the fallback is all that money can be spent on the Tennyson Road enhancement scheme and do, upgrade it again, then fine. But I would like categoric assurance that we can do that, or a wording that makes it reasonable to expect we can do it.
Sarah?
Through you, Chair, I think then I have two suggestions. One is that you make a decision today subject to us bringing back a report relating to the Section 106 before that's signed, so you can see in detail what's being negotiated through that, because normally that would be something that would be officer delegation. Or that you defer making a decision and we ask the transport officer to come and provide a bit more information. I would go with the former, but that's obviously your decision.
I would accept the former through the chair.
So the former proposal is that we go ahead to a decision, but that you will come back with further information.
That we look at the Section 106 obligations as a separate decision, yeah? Or heads of terms anyway. Sorry to refer.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
if I could just clarify, Chair, I think what Sarah's saying is that it will be subject to a further report on the 106, and that would have to be agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That would have to be agreed when, by whom?
By the committee chair.
Sorry, I'm just asking about the same thing.
Sarah, yes. Sorry, I think we're going to suspend the proceedings for about 3 minutes while the officers get a chance.
In this case, what's considered to be the best solution is to say that the resolution will be subject to a further report on the detail of the Section 106 contributions, and that the committee's further consideration will be limited to satisfying themselves that those contributions are adequate mitigation.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that seems to me to be, while it's still in our mind, the most sensible wording for what we are minded to do. So the vote now is to approve, subject to those to that additional wording. And you understand that a report will be brought back, and specifically and isolatedly we will deal with those recommendations in that report. Those in favour of approval with that condition, please indicate. That's unanimous. Thank you so much.